What's up, guys? It's Gambit. Thanks for dropping in for another Godforge video. The beta is upon us. Less than 12 hours to go. Very excited. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the start of the beta. The starting character we're going to take, what you may want to take and why, as well as some of the early characters we're hoping to get our hands on and build up. Let's get into it. All right, here we are with the three starter champs, guys. Guan Yu, Lady Jacques, and Ramses. All three very good characters. If you are unfamiliar with this game type, at the beginning you're going to get tossed into a tutorial where they kind of show you the battle mechanics and things like that before actually releasing you to the full game. And at the end of that tutorial, you get your first champion. Now, these are going to be the three you get to pick from for the beta. There could be more in the full release, but for now, this is what we got. All three very good characters. These characters are actually important. They stay very relevant through the early and mid game, and then start to fall off a little bit in the late game, but you shouldn't have to worry about that for quite some time. It takes a while to get there. So you'll get a lot of great use out of these, and there's really not going to be a wrong choice for you guys here. I would say for the overall experience, my recommendation is going to be Guan Yu. For Lady Jacques and Ramses, there's going to be a couple good use cases where you're going to want to take those instead, and we'll get into why here. All right, starting off with Guan Yu, guys. Rolling through his kit real quick. His A1, attack one enemy 395%, and if the target is under drain, then you inflict additional damage equal to 5% of the target's HP. That's actually really good. They should be under drain from his A2, so that should land pretty frequently for additional chunks of damage. Makes it really good for things against bosses or higher HP targets. Moving on to his A2, Crescent Slash attacks all enemies 325% with a 25% chance for an additional strong hit and an 80% chance to place Drain 2 on the target for 2 turns. Now, reading what Drain 2 does at the bottom there, attackers will deal 20% increased damage and heal for 20% of the damage inflicted. That's going to be huge, especially in the early game for improving the longevity of your teams. It's essentially like placing a leech, if you're familiar with that debuff from other games, on the target, and then your team can just survive longer and do more damage over time. Moving on to the ultimate here, attack 4 random enemies with 175% attack. If an enemy is defeated, then you get Faith up on this hero for 2 turns. And then the passive ability here inflicts 20% increased damage to enemies under drain. So this is going to be huge, guys. So basically, Guan Yu is going to be doing 40% increased damage to enemies under drain himself, and then also giving 20% increased damage to the rest of his team. So that's huge. He's very universal plug and play. He can fit on any team because every teammate is going to benefit from drain. So very good here. And then getting off that, imprint bonus, an additional 10% increased damage to enemies under drain. So basically, he's just boosting his own damage there. And then his leader bonus, they all three have the same leader bonus, but 20% increased attack in all battles. So basically, in a nutshell, Guan Yu does a lot of single target damage and gives your team the ability to have some lifesteal built in, as well as just elevating their attack. So very universal, and that's why he's my recommendation for pretty much all players. If you don't have a specific need for Lady Jacques or Ramses, this is what I would recommend. Let's move on to Lady Jacques. All right, guys, looking at Lady Jacques' kit here, it's very similar, and you'll see that across all three of these is that all of their kits are actually very close to doing the same thing, just with the different debuffs. So Lady Jacques is centered around bleed debuff. Essentially, that's a damage over time effect where every time the boss or the enemy takes a turn, they will take an X percentage of their health as additional damage. Very, very good ability. Bleed stacks up to 10 times. We'll get into that, but let's look at the A1 Bloodletting. Attack 1 enemy, 375% with a 35% chance to place 1 stack of bleed on the target. A2, cooldown of 4, attack all enemies, 310% with a 25% additional chance for a strong hit, with an 80% chance to place 1 stack of bleed on each target. So basically, all of her abilities have a chance to place bleed. You can have up to 10 stacks on one specific enemy. So that'll be huge. And then hovering over it, damages an enemy for 1% max HP of that enemy. So basically, if you're at max stacks, that enemy is going to be taking 10% of their health as damage every turn. Moving on into her ultimate, attacks all enemies 170% twice. If an enemy is defeated, then Lady Jacques will place speed up 2 on herself. Her passive increases damage inflicted by 2% for each stack of bleed on the target, and then her imprint an additional 1%. And then leader bonus is, again, all the same across these 3, 20% attack in all battles. So Lady Jacques, the reason I'm not going to recommend her for most players is because bleed is great, but you kind of need a team that's built around supporting that bleed. You need maybe a bleed detonator. You need more people that can inflict bleed, because 1 per turn isn't quite enough for building up to 10 stacks. So you would need a couple different people there. And that's the reason why I think Guan Yu, for a plug-and-play type character at the start, is better than Lady Jacques. But if you already have identified the team you're going for and it has other bleed-oriented characters on it, then yes, Lady Jacques you'd get a lot of benefit out of. Let's move over to Ramses. So Ramses is the character that I am going to be taking on my own beta run. We'll get into why whenever I address some of the other characters I'm hoping to obtain during the beta. But looking at his kit, very similar to Lady Jacques, just with different debuffs. But Curse of Aru, attack 1 enemy 385% with a 35% chance to place acid on the target for 2 turns. And what acid does, it's similar to poison from other games, but in this game it disables armor sets, deals 5% max HP damage of the enemy at the start of their turn, and deals double damage to shield and barrier. So you get only 5% max HP, whereas 10 stacks of bleed would have been 10%, but it has some of those additional benefits to running acid. Doesn't look to stack. It's only going to be 1 per enemy, which is fine because you can stack it with other things like bleed. You can have both on the same team. That'd be great. Moving on to the A2, attacks all enemies 315% with a 25% additional chance for a strong hit and an 80% chance to place acid on each target for 2 turns. Cooldown of 4 there on the core ability. Moving on to the ultimate, Serpent Strike, attacks all enemies 315% attack. If an enemy is defeated, then increase the turn meter of this hero by 30%. So kind of his own little turn meter engine if it's a wave-based content where he can actually kill an enemy with that. His passive, inflict 20% increased damage to all enemies under acid, so just kind of a self-lifter there. Imprint bonus, an additional 10% increased damage to enemies under acid, and same leader bonus of 20% attack in all battles. So we'll go ahead and move into the other characters that I'm hoping to obtain and why I would be choosing Ramses over Guan Yu. Again, Guan Yu is going to be my recommendation for pretty much all other players that are looking for a plug-and-play type character at the start of the beta. Moving on to the team that I am hoping to build. Keeping my expectations realistic here for the beta. Legendaries are hard to put onto teams, especially for a beta, because your summons are very RNG based. You don't get to just draw the character you want. You just have to draw until you get them, kind of thing. So easier to get the epics, harder to get the legendaries. So for this video and for the beta, we're going to be pushing for this all epic team made up of Ninsun, Brynhild, Freki, Achilles, and Banshee. Run over real quick the why we're doing this team. It is well-rounded. It covers most of the buffs and debuffs that you need to be successful in the game and dungeons against the larger bosses. Some sustain in there. Once we are actually in the beta and we have all these characters assembled, we will be doing an in-depth video on that team, kind of highlighting the synergy between them, what they bring to the table, how it's able to do each bit of content in the game. But that will be a later video. For the sake of just the starting character, I just want to highlight Banshee and the reason why we are selecting Ramses, one of those rare use cases. Acid is a little bit less prevalent in the game than bleed. There are more characters that with their A1 will stack bleeds, and really as far as non-legendaries, it's Banshee or Ramses for people who stack acid. So the reason being is if we can't pull Banshee, then our team won't work. So we're taking Ramses as kind of a backup. He's a good character in his own vein. So this is just a contingency plan. As far as the characters that inflict bleed, like Lady Jacques, there's kind of really other options for you. That's why I wouldn't recommend taking Lady Jacques. But ultimately, the rare pull of Banshee is going to be the reason we're taking Ramses on our account. So I just wanted to explain that. With that, guys, hopefully this video has helped you hone in on the starter champ that you are wanting to take. Let me know in the comments down below, who are you taking? Why are you taking them? I'd love to know. That is going to do it for this video. I really look forward to the beta kicking off here tomorrow. Going to be putting out more videos about that and showing all the teams that we can put together. Very, very excited. But that's going to do it for this video, and I will catch you in the next one.